Hi, I'm Rashana Baldwin, a journalist, a Chicagoan, and a millennial bringing light to everyday stories that matter. I share the type of stories that mainstream media ignores or gets wrong. The news of the neighborhoods, the news that matters. Here is someone you need to know. Meet Nada Khatib. I'm joined with Nada Khatib. She is a palette knife painter from Canada. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me and taking the time to talk.
I love that artwork right behind you. That is amazing, gorgeous.
So much.
And you did that with a knife, one of your tools, one of your instruments. Tell me, give us the audience, the viewers, what is a knife painter? What is a palette knife painter?
So a palette knife painter is somebody who creates their artwork using palette knives, which is, I have them right here so I could just show you. Is this kind of my set?
Ooh, look at your instruments.
Yeah, and so typically people think of artists as using paintbrushes, which I also use sometimes. But palette knife is just a completely different tool, and I think it achieves a different effect. It's a different technique and skill. And so it's typically used for textured work because, like with the knife, you're kind of usually scooping up generous amounts of paint and you're applying it with the knife. You're not using the bristles of a brush to blend as you typically would, but rather using the knife to create, I think, different textures or techniques. So it is my tool of choice. I don't know necessarily why I gravitated to it from the very beginning of my art journey. And it felt like it somewhat came naturally to me. But of course, it's also a skill that you have to build and practice and get used to. But I mean, at this point, I feel like it's just an extension of my hand and I can't paint without them. So I may go in with a brush here and there for certain things, but for the vast majority of my paintings, and this one in particular, for example, is like 95% done with a knife. So
Does
I
it take longer? Does the value of the work make it higher? What's the difference
so it
for
doesn't
an artist who doesn't
necessarily
use it?
take, yeah, it doesn't necessarily take longer. Like the knife in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that it took longer. It just depends on the piece and the artist and the size probably and things like that. And then for the value, I would say with knife work, you're probably using a lot more paint than other artists or usual. So I definitely go through a lot of paint, and then that can kind of increase the price and the value. I would say that's the main difference. Like if you're having a heavily textured artwork, it took a lot of paint, and so that's one thing that can be a big difference between that and kind of a more like flat painting.
So, what led you to your journey? How did you get started? You started what, 14 years ago? How did you get started? Are you self-taught or professionally taught?
So I was around 16 years old when I found some paint collecting dust in my sister's closet, and I just was drawn to it and decided to ask her if I could take it, which she said yeah. And then I just kind of started experimenting. I just went to the art store and bought some stuff, just like any kind of hobbyist would, and created some really basic paintings in the beginning. Some, I'm self-taught. I've never had professional training or gone to art school. So I remember one of my very, very first ones was, I just did one of them, but it was like even paint by numbers. And then shortly after that was like just a bowl with an apple, like super basic stuff. And the first few were by brush. But once I started getting kind of into it and interested in really learning more, I was researching a little bit and discovered palette knife painting. I had no clue that it existed. And so soon after, I got some plastic palette knives, beginner stuff. And I just piece by piece was teaching myself and learning. And in the very beginning, started by kind of emulating artists that I loved, which is a very typical way to teach yourself, anything, including art. But once I discovered that it's something that I wanted to really take seriously, I, started to create my own unique artwork and really push myself to create like what feels authentic to me and original. And yeah, so just building off each piece, I was able to teach myself and kind of develop the skill over now about 14 years.
That's very impressive. and to even develop the skill of palette knife painting. How long does it take a piece like that to finish? That looks like a large piece, and you're doing it with a palette knife. How long does it typically take for a large piece such as that?
I kind of stopped calculating the hours. So it's hard to say exactly, but I guess it could range from, and they often happen in sessions because like something might need to dry in order for me to then like layer or do the, next part of it. But overall, maybe I'm going to guess like 6 to 14 hours or so. It depends how big it is. Yeah. So it really varies, and it depends if it's something that I've kind of done before or it's something completely new. So it's hard to say exactly. It would
How long
depend.
does it take for it to dry? So you say it could take anywhere from 16 to 14 hours, which I applaud artists, painters, because you all do a wonderful job and you have that patience, and I am not patient. So you literally have to sometimes wait for a portion of your paint of the piece to dry. How long does it take for paint to dry? I think of people making jokes, I watch paint dry.
Yeah, and I like making some videos sometimes, like checking if it's dry and poking at it and playing with it. But so typically, painters often use either acrylic paint or oil paint or watercolor. Let's say those are like the three most common. And watercolor dries super quick, and then acrylic paint second would dry pretty quickly relative to oil paint. And so, because it is thick, it may take a little longer, but I would say 1 to 2 days maximum, and my pieces are dry. And then oil paintings take much longer, especially if they're thick. I've heard they can take up to years, and I've heard some that never dry, which is like crazy to me. Like that would drive me crazy personally. I like working with acrylic paints. One of the main reasons is because they do dry fast. So I would not have the patience to wait weeks or even months or anything like that. So I do like to work quickly. I'm actually not a very patient person, and I feel like it's interesting how our positive and even potentially negative attributes can be reflected in the artwork, or it kind of makes it uniquely yours because it reflects your traits. And so I'm not that patient, and I like to work quickly. And I don't know, I feel like the way I work and what I create reflects that in a way. And so part of that has to do with the medium that I like, and that is acrylics, and part of it is because it dries relatively quickly.
You have a very impressive social media following. I found you on social media by way of your sister. Um, how did you build that fan base? You have what, almost 50 plus followers. Where are they based from? Are they America, Canada, all over? And how do you interact with them?
So I started growing my audience mainly on Instagram a little over 2 years ago. It was when I decided to pursue art professionally and full time that I was committed to the whole practice, including, like kind of the business side, like how am I going to share it and how am I going to make a living off of my art and things like that. So I decided and was very committed to posting regularly, creating content, sharing with my audience, showing them the process and behind the scenes and the finished work, and finding ways to make sure letting people know that this is available for sale and things like that, which I think is a really important part of doing it full time and professionally if that's what one wants to do. So yeah, it's been about a little over 2 years, and I'm really grateful because I know for a fact that my audience has led to my ability to do this full time and to make a living off of my art, which was always kind of the dream. So that's really worked out and been awesome. But it definitely takes a lot of time to create content. It's not that easy, and I know a lot of people, you can post once or twice, but to do it every day is a grind. And like that's what I did for a while. I slack a little bit now, but it's time consuming, and the result I think is very much worth it. So that's kind of been my.
You have a loyal. I think you're right. I know you're right, because you have a loyal audience of 50 plus, followers who are looking and watching and purchasing your work. I think that's very impressive, especially like you said, you've only been doing it 2 years, and you have some influencers who don't have half as many followers as you. So that kudos to you. Are they buying? Are you constantly in demand? If that's the case, if with your large following.
it's funny because we all have our own like processes in our heads and insecurities and like, you know, thought processes. So I go through cycles of like, if I have a piece, I'm like, oh my God, is it gonna sell? And at the end of the day, I have to be objective, and I'm often hard on myself, but at the end of the day, I think the response has been really good. And like for example, this year, out of all the paintings I've made, which is about almost 80, there's only 2 available, and they often sell super quickly. Like this one sold before I could even share it. You know, somebody saw it and then just bought it right away. So that's always like, I literally still do a happy dance anytime I sell a painting. It's so exciting. It's really the joy of my life and like the dream that I really wanted to work towards. So I'm really grateful that there's a demand for my artwork, and it's really exciting. And I feel like I can never really paint fast enough, and I constantly have ideas, and I want to bring them to life and share them with everybody, but it never seems fast enough. So I'm hoping to get out some new pieces over the next few weeks and months. I know there's like several people kind of waiting for some, so it's really, really amazing. I'm so grateful that people, you know, love it enough to want to purchase it and put them in their homes and such.
With COVID-19, how has business changed for you? How have you pivoted and kept in your business afloat and still been able to produce on demand?
So I actually remember the first painting I posted right after everything crashed, and you know it was officially like a pandemic. And I think I put in my caption, I'm like, I don't really expect to sell anything. I thought, you know, again, like it's my own naivete or like, you know, lack of experience. I just thought like, oh, business is over. It's all gonna go down. So I think I posted like, yeah, I don't really expect to, you know, be selling as much, and you know things are really rough right now. But to my surprise, things kept moving and life went on, and people were still buying art. So I was very pleasantly surprised and so grateful that people were still willing to support and able to. So things have still been moving pretty normally, I would say. I'm so also like grateful that I have my own kind of home business, and I'm self-employed. So I know I wasn't going to get, you know, laid off. It's kind of just like, if people can continue to support me and buy my art, I can continue to do what I love. So things have been moving still, and no real significant difference. Still, my audience is growing, and I've been kind of also experimenting more on TikTok these days and growing my audience there as well, which also can lead to sales and business. So that's been good, and things are still good, thankfully.
How have you all adapted there in Canada? What has it been like since the hit of COVID-19? What's the
Um,
morale like in Canada right now? I mean, you know, when COVID-19 hit up until now, are you all sheltering in place? Do you have stricter, you know, shelter in place regulations? You know,
First,
restaurants.
it was kind of just like the panic mode, I think, for everybody, where there was the like really long lines and people were also panic buying and things like that. And then we were just generally, everybody was just social isolating and distancing for like a long time, like extreme measures, like not really going anywhere or doing anything. And then slowly, I think it was like provincially, they started to go into different phases. I think similar to the US, like phase 1, phase 2 of just reopening things in general. And where we're at now is pretty much that, you know, things are open and everywhere requires a mask now indoors, which was like, it's strange because that wasn't the case the first few months. And then that was like only maybe 2 months ago that happened, a little bit late into it. But yeah, you just have to wear a mask indoors. But you know, we don't really go to like restaurants as much and travel, you know, again, like it's difficult not to see family and things like that. But for the most part, because I'm able to still work, life feels pretty normal. And then I'll just see family. Actually, I was able to do a kind of social distance paint party, like a painting class outdoor last month. So that was really nice, and it was at a park.
Wow.
Because I'm used to doing a lot of art shows and a lot of painting classes as well, which would typically be indoors. So that was kind of one of the major differences for me. And so doing a painting class outdoors at the park last month was really nice, and you know, gave me some sense of normalcy, I guess. But and we're not doing a lot of those things anymore. And
Prior to COVID-19, were you traveling? Were you doing art installations and series?
I was traveling more for leisure, not necessarily for work, but right before, I think I came back from travel like mid-March, we were in Miami. So that was a weird coincidence. It was at the very beginning of kind of the pandemic. And I wasn't there for work per se, but there's definitely a big art scene there. And there's a really cool area with tons of murals. And went to a couple galleries and stuff like that. So I was more just kind of scoping out the scene, but yeah, it's, not being able to travel is a little tough now, and I think reduces some kind of opportunities and things, but
When you're not selling, are you commissioned, are any galleries asking you to do series, or have you done like putting your work in art galleries and doing art installations?
I haven't worked with any galleries as of yet. I do commissions for customers regularly. I've been doing commissions for probably like about 5 years now. And so that's like a consistent part of my practice, which is basically custom work for clients. And I'm thinking potentially to take a break from that soon, just to make more time for other things. But it's always nice to bring someone's vision to life and make something kind of meaningful for them. It usually has some kind of sentimental aspect or something like that. So I haven't gone down the gallery route yet, but I do commissions as part of my practice.
Where do you draw your inspiration when you're creating your work of art? What inspires you? Are you listening to music when you paint? What gets your creative juices flowing?
So I usually have like a lot of ideas around what I want to create, and I sometimes do a little bit of planning. I'll have an idea of what I want to create and often think through like the color scheme. Color is a big part of my work. And that definitely, I think, creates kind of a lot of emotion and in the response to the artwork. And so I'm very inspired by different color combinations and the way that they work together and make things pop. And then a lot of my work is nature inspired, so I seek a lot of inspiration from the outdoors. Like, I'm a huge nature person and feel very connected to nature, so a lot of it will be inspired by my travels and my walks and hikes and things like that. So I'm sometimes also inspired by my previous works. Like, if I have kind of an artist block, I might just look at things I've made before and put ideas together and create different versions or color schemes and things like that. And then lastly, I'm also inspired by my personal experiences and social injustices. So I created a series around Muslim women that was called Veil or Frill. And there were 4 pieces I created to kind of portray Muslim women and modest women who cover in a positive light and with kind of strength and beauty. And so that was one series I did that's very personal to me and my story. And then I also, in June, created a couple pieces dedicated to the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was important for me to draw some light on that social injustice and that issue that we're all kind of facing and that needs to just be brought to light. And I wanted to really vehemently stand against racism and just portray that in the way that I know how, which is through my artwork. And so there were a couple of pieces that had the Black Fist, which was in solidarity with, the movement, and then, to bring my own kind of style to it. And, again, the way I know how, I created some flowers around it. And my artwork generally leans, towards hopeful and joyful art. And so it was kind of brought something that's very, it's ugly right now. It's very disturbing what's happening and how, people of color are being treated and, the injustices, and just brought it with something kind of beautiful and hopeful that kind of symbolizes growth and change and something, positive that hopefully can come out of it. And so I'm inspired by nature, but I do want my work to also often reflect the things that are important to me. And so combining them, it means a lot to me, and it's something I want to continue to do. It's not something we should just do once when, this movement starts. It's something we have to
Exactly.
continually work on, and in the way we know how. I'm not necessarily going to be able to put together a protest or speak, but I can create artwork and share it with my audience, and shed light on this issue and build more awareness. And
yeah, and that's a good point that I was going to touch on. And I'm glad you brought that up, with the civil unrest that happened nationally and globally, and to see artists and a painter as yourself and individuals in different professions using their profession as a way to speak out, using what they went to train or school, or what their focus is. How can we make a difference in our specific field? And I did see that artwork with the fist, and I was really blown away. I thought it was some great work. Have you had more clients reach out to you to create pieces around this? Has it been an increase around this? And have your fellow peers come together and decided to, I don't know, was it any artist talks or any, what has been the conversations? I just gave you two questions to ask. What's been the conversations? We can start there. What's been the conversations like with your fellow peers in regards to, the civil unrest and, just the ugliness that we're seeing?
So in the art world, I saw, several artists in my community doing similar work, and using their medium and their artwork to also, support the movement. And so I think we've inspired one another to use our platforms and address the issues, which is nice. And then also, I participated in an interview by a journalism student at UCS, and she created a video about art during the Black Lives Matter movement. And so she was just drawing on a couple of different artists who use their artwork to kind of speak out. And then I haven't been commissioned specifically for a piece in that regard, but I am currently working on a special piece that will be used and donated to the Women's Sexual Assault Center of Renfrew County, which is the county I currently reside in. And that piece will be centered around not only survivors of sexual assault, but also Black women and Indigenous women. And so I'm working on the piece that will have 3 images in the middle that symbolize that. One for Black women, one for Indigenous women, and one for survivors of sexual assault. And then it will be used by the Sexual Assault Center of Renfrew County and donated to them. So I'm excited about that piece, and happy to have been approached by them and work with them to bring that to life. But other than that, it's just, something that's definitely on the forefront of my mind of how can we continue to do what we're doing and use our platforms for good, because like we were saying, it's not just like a one-time thing. But I haven't been approached by anybody else for a commission per se, but it's something that I don't want to just fall on the back burner, and we it's definitely still ongoing, whether or not it's being covered as much or even in the right way. And it's really not over till it's over, and it's probably something, honestly, that we will have to fight for and strive for generation after generation. And so that's just the reality of it. And so we can't just forget. It's too important. And I hope to continue to create work that sheds light on those issues.
I applaud your efforts for doing that. I applaud the efforts of every, like I said, expert professional in their own field, using their platform to highlight the change needs to take place and really call out the injustices. So I thank you as a Black woman from America in Chicago on the South Side. That's impressive. And, it was like you said, a dark, ugly time. We were all like, what is going on? But to see across the country, across the world, individuals actually speaking out. The other question I want to ask regarding that same topic, did you, in Canada, were there protests and rallies happening as well?
So there were. I moved kind of in the middle of the pandemic and right before, things kind of popped off with this movement. And so I moved mid-May into a very small town. There's only about 18,000 people here. So it was a strange time for me. And unfortunately, there weren't any protests here. It's a super small town. And so I know that there were, some in Toronto and in larger cities in the area, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend them myself. And in Calgary, where I had just moved from, they also had some. And so I saw some of my friends and people going out and supporting. And so I don't know that they're ongoing. which is unfortunate, I think. And I think in America they still are. But yeah, it's so important to not just let it be a phase, right? It's so important that we don't just think it's a one-time thing. It's not it's not even close to over, unfortunately. So hopefully there will still be more of that, and if I can join, I'd be more than honored to.
How can we find you? How can we commission your work? Should we go on your amazing Instagram page? Do you have a website? Do you have a YouTube?
Yeah, so my website is expressionbynada.com. On there, you can find all of my work that's available. I have some prints and other things for purchase, and then I also have a commissions page which outlines, the process, and there you can contact me, or my email is also on there. It's expressionbynada@gmail.com. And then my Instagram is there for hopefully inspiration and some entertainment and some satisfying videos for people to enjoy. So the best way to reach me would be by email, and definitely check out my website. I hope that people get inspired and can learn a little bit more about me. And if anyone is interested in commissions, please feel free to reach out.
In addition to commissions, you said you also do prints. I also saw stickers and other pieces of work that you do for individuals who, like myself, who may not be able to afford your great work. I could get something that's more affordable, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I actually have they're like 5 by 7 inch prints, so they're pretty small, and they're $10 Canadian each, and there's some mix and match bundles, and they're restocking in about 1 or 2 weeks. I placed my order yesterday, so a lot of new ones are coming, and then hopefully new stickers are coming. And I got new product, which are going to be notebooks. So this painting is actually going to be on the cover of some of the notebooks. I'm excited about that. I think it's a nice way, like you said, to just have it be accessible to more people, functional, enjoyable on different levels. So I think there's something for everyone. And also I think larger prints will be coming soon as well. If you want more of a statement piece, but not an original. So that's coming soon. And hopefully somebody, everyone feels like there's something for them. I think it's important to be inclusive and have inclusive price points and artwork in general.
Say that one more time for those in the back who cannot hear you. Thank you for that.
It's very important.
You are amazing. And I say that not just to gas you up, but I go to a lot of galleries, and I met the exclusive painters, artists where they wasn't tangible. You couldn't even get a piece of their work. So again, I say I appreciate your inclusiveness, because I am going to purchase some, I bought a condo and I want beautiful, authentic artwork, and not the things you see from the stores that I won't name, or, you just get something that's, manufactured and just reproduced really quickly. The last thing I want to ask you, as we draw to a close, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Because right now you're blowing up, you're taking the world by storm, you're a millennial. You're doing great work. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Where do you see your work, 5 years from now?
Oh, that's a good question. Especially reflecting on the last 2 years and how much has happened, it kind of gets me excited about the future in a way that I've never been before. I never really had any hopes and aspirations for myself, honestly, and my career before I pursued art. So to feel excited is great and invigorating. And the mystery of it is partly what excites me. So, obviously I don't know for a fact, but I do have dreams of expanding, my business. So I do originals now and the smaller prints. I want to have the bigger prints available as well. I also plan on launching some online courses, hopefully this year. And so doing my online courses will be another branch that I hope to expand and be able to. I do have a passion for teaching and, and sharing, what I've learned along the way with others. So I hope to do that, and just, continuously, increase and improve my skill in my artwork, and, more and more create artwork that is identifiable as my own and very unique and, unlike anything anyone's ever seen. And so just continuing to build on what I'm learning and practicing, and hopefully making larger artworks as well. So the larger, the kind of scarier, but I think I'll dive into that soon enough.
Is that therapeutic for you? When you said like the larger the better, is painting therapeutic, period? But the question, I guess, is when you're doing those larger pieces, did that even feel more therapeutic and like serene when you're creating massive masterpieces?
So it's definitely therapeutic in general. I would say it's not more therapeutic if it's larger, but I would say it's more like satisfying, and like the impact is more. And so when it finally comes together, and like it really requires that patience for the larger pieces. Like small ones are fun sometimes because it's like instant gratification. Like you can sit down and get it done, and then you have something, and that's therapeutic and fun in and of itself. But the larger ones, they take that patience and persistence, and then when it's done, and you can like step back and see like all that work you put into it, and it's just large, so it makes an impact. Like that's kind of exciting. So it's obviously, I think, more difficult to do larger pieces, and so it's something that I think artists, or especially our self-taught, kind of build up to. But I think I'm ready for it. I've had this huge canvas sitting for a long time, like in my garage before, and just been staring at it and intimidated by it. So I think one day I'll go for it and do something huge.
Before I let you go, do you do portraits? Have you been asked to do portraits?
Yeah, I don't do portraits very often at all. I don't paint hyperrealism, and I don't really enjoy doing that. And so I wouldn't really take that on. So my Veil or Frill series of the Muslim women, they have people in them, and so I could actually just show you. Like, there's one right here.
Oh, wow, that's gorgeous.
So much, and there's one here. And so that's as much as you'll see me painting people, probably. It's not my preferred, subject, or what I really like specialize in even. And so I would never just take a picture of a person and like, I'm going to be like, recreate this. Like, that's not what I do. But I don't mind incorporating people in my artwork in general for a purpose, such as these.
Awesome. Nada Khatib, Canadian palette knife painter. Thank you so much for this interview. I look forward to talking to you again. I know we're going to talk again.